Hello and welcome to Down to Earth Convos Down Under, episode 15. In this episode, Ali and I talk about identity theft and protection, and keeping both your social accounts and your finances as safe as possible in the information-driven world we live in.
Hey there, Brad. How are you?
Hey Ali, I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm fantastic too. Really good.
Excellent. So today we wanted to talk about protecting your identity, protecting your money online especially. So have a think, how many scammer stories have you heard about in the recent past or a long time ago? And honestly, I'm a bit intrigued because Ali, you chose this topic. And when I first saw it, I was thinking, online identity theft, all this sort of stuff, not online necessarily, but identity theft, hasn't that kind of gone the way of the serial killer in a sense, where this was a really prevalent occurrence in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even a little bit in the 90s, but then it really massively dropped off and trended towards zero. Obviously not at zero. There's people who still are serial killing. There are people who are still getting their identity stolen, of course, but it seems much less prevalent, even though it's more easy now. You don't really see that many news articles and stories and things about it. So why this topic? Why now? What's your thoughts on that, Ali?
Okay. Well, that's very interesting that you are intrigued by my topic of today, Brad. I look at, just a reminder for our listeners, parents raising kids, and there could be some grandparents. I'd like to bring them into today's topic as well. Just a reminder that we're on a mission to share lessons they don't teach in school. So I'm wondering, in the school system, in our home, are we speaking about protecting your identity, which is the most valuable asset you have? It's about you. For me, I'm an accountant by profession, so I dot I's, I cross T's. I've been known to be conservative, and sometimes my family might label me as like, oh my God, Mum, you're so paranoid. But I discovered Frank Abagnale some time ago when I was searching on this subject about identity. And for those listeners and viewers that don't know who Frank Abagnale is, he was notoriously famous for the movie Catch Me If You Can, which was Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio played Frank Abagnale. And Frank Abagnale was an imposter and fraudulent. He forged checks back in the 1960s from the age of 15 to 21. So he posed as pilots and doctors, but mainly pilots, and he flew the world, and he was a con man. And this is a quote straight from Frank. He says it's 1,000 times easier today to steal someone's identity than it was back in the 1960s. So you might find that interesting, because when you listen to Frank and he explains why, it makes a lot of sense. And the answer is because of technology. Technology has made it so much easier to con someone out of two things: their information and money. And valuable information for everyone. I really want to get these parents to teach their kids that your name, your address, your date of birth, the place where you were born, your passport, your driver's license, these need to be protected. So whenever someone asks you to give up this information, I don't share my information on email because I know emails can be hacked. It's very easy to hack into emails. I'm going to be touching on a few things. Please remind me to talk about hacking into emails and how that can help scammers can steal your money that way. So I would never scan my passport, driver's license. I am so protective of it, and I'm so protective of all my trainees that I have here when their registered training organisations need their personal details, which is the USI, their unique student identification number. These sort of things are they're important, because what people don't realise that, according to Frank Abagnale, if we're talking identity theft, so you've got, like, this is a word that I believe we should be chatting about, identity theft, where someone can steal your identity. For someone like myself that has accumulated wealth over in assets and what have you, someone can take a loan out in my name and destroy my reputation, for example. So that's just one thing. So for identity theft, the grandparents and parents that are posting beautiful events of their children's lives, like their first birthday, their second birthday, and their fifth birthday, and any birthday at all from any one of us. What's happening is there can be people, and it sounds a little bit paranoia, but I just want people to be consciously aware that those, according to Frank, that those identifications can be stolen in the future, and they're more valuable the younger that person is. Like a 2-year-old is valuable on the black market, because by the time that 2-year-old reaches 18, an adult, someone who has bought that identity can pose as that person and have their identity stolen. Sounds pretty full on, doesn't it?
Definitely. Is this something that the average person needs to worry about? Do they only target, certain people? What's your thoughts?
Well, I protect my identity, and it's not to the extent of being paranoid. But as Frank says, it's easy to steal an identity, and it's just as easy to protect it. So he suggests that we protect those personal details, like I just said. Your name, your date of birth, your address it's so easy to find. It is actually easy to find when you're on different platforms, Twitter and social media and LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and that sort of thing. You're just weaning out information. Like as Frank says, we're sharing way too much information to pretty much, there's corrupt people in the world and there's con artists. So it's just to be mindful. So remember one of the things is like if you haven't got it already, to put a lock on your letterbox to protect the mail that's coming in. A lot of mail comes through email, but a lot of mail comes through the post as well. So like your rates notice, for example, your bank statements, they are revealing private personal information. And what annoys me really is that someone can take a bank loan out in your name without actually, really, like a bank is just, they should have a safe portal where they upload information like my accountants and banks have in the past. But I don't think the technology is good enough for the world we live in today. There's certain organisations that are just not good enough, as far as I'm concerned, with managing and handling our personal information, which is, passports, licenses, USI numbers, unique student identification numbers, all those sorts of things. So I'm just one of those pain in the neck people that when someone rings me, so if it's someone ringing me and they're saying they're Telstra, because they've rung me, I don't know who they are. I'm sorry, Sam from Telstra, you might be a hell of a nice guy, but I don't know who you are. And then they say to me, oh, so just checking that it's you, Alison. What's your date of birth? I go, you tell me. You rang me. I'm not giving up any of my information for someone that's rung me. I don't know who they are. And I'm talking that people that ring me are from the Australian Taxation Office, and I'm pretty sure that's them. But I've just said, look, I'm just one of those people. I'm not going to share any of my identity with you. You need to give me your number. And then I check that number is the ATO. I Google it. I do the reference number. It's pretty easy to find if an employee or someone, a representative of that company is truly ringing from them, because they'll give you a number and you'll know that it's Telstra number or an ATO number, Australian Taxation Office number, or what have you. My dad was quite savvy, and he told me on many occasions, more than once, I'm talking multiple. So he was in his 80s and he got calls from people posing as Telstra and the Australian Taxation Office. And he rings me and I say, hey, Dad, good on you for ringing me. The ATO, the Australian Taxation Office, Dad, they're not chasing you. And I punch their number in and it's just one of those numbers that come up, complaints from this particular number. There's scammers, they're out there, and I just want people to be aware of these things. And the vulnerable people, they say, are the young people and the elderly. So, for the parents that are watching and listening, well, make sure your parents, the kids' grandparents, are on their game as well. Question, and don't give up your personal information. It's gold.
Definitely. So there are some risks, clearly, to being active online, being on social media, making payments online. What would you say are the best strategies to protect yourself? So obviously the one that comes to mind for me is two-factor authentication. So when you go to log into a certain platform, it'll send a code to your phone, and then you need to put that in as well as your password, so that if someone's got your password, they still need access to your phone. They can't get in and do anything malicious or nefarious. another one is just really being aware of what you're posting online, because it's true, when you get a call from the bank or from Optus or Telstra or whoever, they want to know your date of birth, they want to know your address, and
Yeah.
that's how they verify that it's you who's making a change to your plan. So you can call them up and they'll still ask you for those things. So that it's not dodgy in that sense. But if someone calls you, you don't want to be giving over that information. But yeah, it's just very, very strange and very interesting that places still use such outdated methods of verifying people as what's your address, what's your date of birth. Well, a lot of people have that information, and it's not really hidden.
That's right. And that's why I think the banks set up these passwords, because when you've set up a password, that's pretty unlikely someone would be able to hack that. Because while we're on the subject of passwords, I don't write any password down that it's to do with accessing my bank, or, I mean, there's lots of things that we're investing in these days. So I just memorize those numbers, and I have a little system in my head, and I work with that. So I wouldn't write it down. So that's but it is absolutely true. They are way behind their times with with the technology that's available for, two-factor authentication. For example, like, I still receive emails today that are just like from Word. And one of my builders, the builder that deals with me, it comes through as a Word document that I can actually amend. Like, I can seriously type and correct these errors that he's made in there. He doesn't send it through as a PDF even. So if it hasn't come through, if I'm paying someone for the very first time, so in other words, a subcontractor or someone that I haven't dealt with before, where I haven't got their bank details saved in my internet banking, I would ring and speak to that person and say, hey, can you read me back your details and make sure that they agree to their BSB and account number. That sounds ridiculous, but I do follow Hi Says, you and I both follow Florine, and he is a YouTuber, and he's really cool, actually. He puts forward he talks about current newspapers, the current issues, news that come up in the newspapers. And one particular builder got done up for $57,000, and that was just due to someone hacking into the emails and changing the BSB. And his client questioned it, well, in her head, but didn't go, oh, hey, Joe Blow, have you happened to change your banking details? Really? So anytime I get that from a supplier, hey, Ali, just letting you know I've changed my banking details, first thing I do is, yep, no worries, just ringing, checking your BSB, your account number, and they go, yes. I've never been, haven't questioned it, but I was made aware of this by my bank manager. I have a business bank manager, and he made me aware of that years ago, at least 3 years ago. And it's in the notes. It's I've read it in the banks. Be careful, watch out who you're paying. So a lot of people are not aware of this, so I just thought I'd share that one as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. And some people have multiple banks with multiple institutions as well. So it's a cause for confirming, but not necessarily if you say someone sends through an invoice that's got a different number on it that you need to panic, just call them up and ask. One thing that you mentioned in there was the PDF as well. So just to clarify, what I would do when I would send invoices to my work, instead of adjusting the Word document and saving it as a PDF every time, I just downloaded a PDF editor, and that's how I did it. So, there's an idea that PDFs are more secure because they're not as easily editable, but the reality is it's very easy to use PDF editor to make changes on that.
That's right. So if it hasn't come through like a platform, an accounting software program, say like Xero software, which is what I use, a lot of people use that, and it has two-way authentication with those special codes. Oh, and just quickly too, you did touch on, Brad, what can we do to protect ourselves is enhanced banking. So you ring your bank and you just ask for the enhanced banking. So often you have a token, and I have a token, it's on my phone. Yeah, so it's just all those extra steps so that if you did get hacked, it's like, how can they actually get money out of your account? Because you need that extra two-way authentication code and stuff like that. So please do not anyone give up your information willingly to someone over the phone. I won't mention who it is, but a family member that I know very well got done up by a con artist that posed as Telstra. and it's because ignorance is absolutely no excuse. That's why, I'm sharing this stuff that actually sounds common sense to me. And you thought it sounded like it was like from the dinosaur era, but I honestly think you just cannot underestimate how smart con artists are. They can pose very easily as someone, and they can be very legit. They're so professional at it. This is their career. They're con artists. That's their career. So they're very, very good. And this particular family member, who was a little bit older, she unfortunately got taken by a con artist who posed as Telstra, said, it sounds so hard to believe, but see, credit cards, Frank Abagnale talks about credit cards being the safest thing to use online. And that refutes what we've said in the past about, not wanting our young ones to have credit cards and what have you. We have to be very mindful of it because you can get into debt very quickly if you don't understand how credit works. But Frank talks about that credit cards are the safest thing to use online, because if there's any fraudulent activity done on the credit card, you can, as long as you're onto it within pretty sure it's 90 days, to question and dispute the transaction. So if it's faulty goods or it's completely fraud, it just bounces back out of your account, and that person that you paid has to prove that it's a legit thing.
Right.
So this particular person, she was conned into turning her credit card back, turning it over and reading the numbers on the back, which are the same numbers as the front. It sounds so ignorant. The con artist got $6,000 that day, and they followed up and got another $4,000, so $10,000 in 2 days, and she had not a leg to stand on. And even the con artist said, as posing as Telstra, remember that? So we're just about to send you a code now. Read that code back to me. And she read the code back, and that's how she got the $6,000, and then the following $4,000 ripped off. And the banks, she said, it's all the bank's fault, but it wasn't, because she fed them the information they required, which was the numbers on the back of the credit card and the code that she ignorantly passed on from her phone, because they were just they cleverly disguised themselves. So I know it sounds ridiculous, and as you asked before, how many people do you know who have been scammed? And when you listen to them, you think, oh, how could you be so silly? But it happens. People are vulnerable. I thought it was worth sharing these sort of topics, this conversation today.
And definitely. And what can people do to protect themselves better? We've talked a little bit about, multi-factor online banking and transactions. Do we need to bust out the shredders for, old bank statements and bills that we no longer need to dispose of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So Frank talks about that in his YouTube, which anyone could look him up. Talks about the shredder, and there's a high quality shredder. So we're talking credit cards, shredding them up. Scott papers we've chatted about before, chuck them in the blender if they chop up. Well, no one's going to be pulling those numbers out. And shredders, I've got properties, so there's great ways I can destroy my documents that have the golden nuggets of personal information that we need to protect, right? Your address and, your rates, numbers, and all these sort of things. They can just collate, because when you look at identity, when you're going to prove who you are to a JP that you have to prove who you are, you pretty much have to JP that original passport, original driver's license. And that's what I want to see step up in this world. Is I want to see if anyone's taking out a loan in anyone's name, I think they need a statutory declaration to say, hey, that's a copy of my passport or my driver's license, because they're worth 100 points. So you need to look at those point systems. But if you haven't got them, if you haven't got a passport, next thing you know, you need a Medicare card number or a rates notice. Before you know it, they've got a few identity pieces, a few documents on you. And yeah, that's what we've got to protect. So definitely use a shredder. Be very mindful and careful of your mail that's coming to your address. So we put on locks on our letterboxes. We destroy our documents in ways that that no one can discover them and find that information. Also, one that I use is for those who may not realize, it's your credit score. So that's your name. You have a credit score, and it's very important to look after that credit score. So there's online you can register for. There's 3 that I would like to share with people if you want to get your credit report. So keep an eye on that. I use Equifax, which is quite simple. You can just register who you are, and then you can keep an eye on if there's any fraudulent activity where someone is actually trying to take out a loan in your name or what have you. You're onto it very quickly, and you say, hey, that's not me. I didn't take out a car loan. I don't have a car loan that I haven't paid off.
The funny
So,
thing
and then
is
you can pay a month.
Equifax got hacked a few years ago.
Is that right? Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting? So that's of course, and why wouldn't it? And Frank talks about that in his YouTube clips about Social Security. They got hacked, over in the US, and that thousands of people had their Social Security numbers, stolen. So these are very important identification numbers. So you can use Exiperin and TransUnion. There's a few of them online, and I just choose to use one. Keep an eye on my credit score, and you can get a report free once a year. So keep an eye on it once a year, or you can pay a small fee of once a month. And so that's just something else you can do. Of course, I don't have a debit card, never have. And apparently they're not so safe either, because if you did use a debit card online, so there must be some way of doing that.
Well, that's what I do. So that's what I was going to ask, actually, because I've only ever had debit cards. I was wondering why they would be less secure than a credit card.
Because the debit card, the funds come out of your funds. And then if you have to fight fraudulent activity from funds coming out of your debit card,
it's already
that will take way longer. It's already come off. So now you're chasing money from the bank and working them over to say proving fraud. So the money's gone. And that's what happened with my family member who got diddled, because it firstly was a credit card transaction that she gave the credit cards up. So if that's fraudulent, bang, within a day you'll have that's fraudulent activity that you would report it, you would dispute it, and it would bounce back to the credit card. But because this con artist went that one step further, for some reason she transferred money into her account, her savings account, and then did a withdrawal that way, which turned out to be coming out of her savings account rather than a credit card, because a credit card would have been fraudulent, disputed, and then she would have got her money back. But that's not the way it played out. Credit cards are way safer.
I wonder if that might be a little bit outdated, because there's been times where I've gone to purchase high ticket items where the bank has shut it down from my debit card and thought, this is too much. This is, we've locked the card. You'll have to ring us to get us to fix that up. So perhaps debit cards are safer now than they used to be.
That's if it's over $1,000. Is it if it's over $1,000?
Yeah, it was when I bought my PC a year and a half ago. I think I was $2,500, and he had it all on the desk there. I went to pay, and the card was declined, and I knew I had the funds on the account, and I had to go and ring ANZ and clarify, yes, it is me at PLO Computers, and I want to buy this computer. Please let me do so.
Yeah, that's good, because that's that $1,000 limit thing that they have to protect for those reasons, for sure. Okay. But it's important that we update our information, and a lot of the stuff is outdated on YouTube. So so let's just keep on the game and monitor what we're doing, for sure.
Yeah, and the best thing to do when you get those silly nonsense emails asking for your details is not reply, delete them, get rid of them.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to put any time and energy into answering or even reading the scammers' emails. There is a funny, I found it quite humorous, is that TED Talk. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Suspicious emails where the guy posed like he was just playing a game with the scammer. And I actually think it's quite humorous, because it was a great delivery on the TED Talk. That guy, what's his name? We wrote it down, James Veitch, Beitch.
I'll put a link in the description.
You put a link. Yeah, if someone wants to laugh and they've got a bit of time, I just think it's quite humorous. But and I had a mate that, that you get them on the call and it's someone ringing you to sell you something. My mate, who's quite humorous as well, he's a plumber, and he used to answer the phone, just leave it on hold, go and bath the kids, and just, you can just have a bit of fun with it. Because, obviously, as you say, it is common sense. You really feel, and energetically, your intuition is telling you, hey, this is too good to be true. And if it's too good to be true, often it is. So I could just write a book.
Be careful if you do respond to them, because they can cut parts of your voice up. They can modify what you say to some extent to get you to say things. So if you don't say anything, then you're in the safest position. That's right. I've learned that through technology that Describer uses as well, the voice recognition. And when I just remember a scam where people would pick up the phone a few years ago and they'd say, is this your name? And then they'd say yes. And that yes was then used and played back when they said, do you want to upgrade your account to this bullshit? And they were charging the account, and they got that yes. So saying something as simple as yes to, is this your name, that potentially can be used against you.
That's right. So we've got to, I guess the point, the message of today is prevention rather than cure. Let's be savvy, like tech savvy, and be mindful of those two things that, as Frank Abagnale says, the people are after your information and your money. So let's just really take the time, be conscious, and don't rush into it. And that, this scarcity mentality, they hold the phone while you get your credit card. And whether it's sales, people selling us online, just have that cooling off period. That would be something that because we're all about teaching lessons that they fail to teach in school, and also we want to be money savvy. So we work really hard for our money. So we've got to work really hard to protect it, to save it and invest it and grow it. So there's a lot of influential, the salespeople are so good at it. And I really feel like sometimes I get sucked into it to myself in buying something that I really didn't need, because it's like there's a time limit on it, and there's a scarcity strategy that the salespeople use. I'm thinking, you know what, if you miss out on that time, just log on to their emails and do it all again, because that offer's usually there. So I guess it's worth mentioning that as well. So just
and you
protect
could even
your
call them up and
information.
say, will you honour that price that you did the other day? They might not, but they also might.
Yeah, exactly. There's no harm in asking. That's good. So anything else we want to add to today?
I just had one thing that came up. So about a year into my work, about 5 years ago, I had a new job and I was paid as a contractor, and the ATO, the real ATO, actually did contact me, and they wanted to see a contract that I had to make sure that it was legit. What would you say are the key things to look for to make sure that, because the ATO occasionally they will call, or Telstra or whoever, and it will be them, and they will be trying to do something, to legally make sure that you're following requirements, or to perhaps give you a better plan, probably not, but they might need to contact you for something. What would you say are the key things to look for?
Pretty much is I don't give them any information at all, ever, never, ever. When they ring me, I ring them. I need to find out who they are. They've got to prove who they are first before I tell them who I am. So that is pretty much, I really am a pain in the neck when they get me. I just say it to them. I just go, oh, I'm one of those people, those. I know you probably Telstra and you sound really lovely to who this lovely person is on the other end. And they just go, okay, yep, push this. This is our number. You can go online. You'll see it's Telstra. Push extension 231. Oh, this is my name. This is my ID number. They tell me this. They've got these are the things that Telstra said. This is me. This is my extension number. And then I ring back them. And then I go through the rows. And it's Telstra, push line 3, option 3, blah, blah, blah. And with the tax office, it's the same. And pretty much if everyone did that, there would be less fraudulent activity. But there's no way. You just cannot do it. It's just too easy to be ripped off these days. As Frank says, it's 1,000 times easier because of the technology that we have. And look, facial recognition, did we touch on that? It's quite interesting that within 7.5 minutes, and Frank hasn't put up too much recent information I've noticed. I don't know whether I said before that he's actually an agent for the FBI because he went to jail, and the FBI, because he was so good at what he did, they did a deal with him. They said they got him out of jail and said, you can work for us.
That
you can
happens
tell
a
us.
lot, or a surprising amount, yeah.
Yeah, so he's turned he's all good. He's all for the good of the people. And I think that he's legitimately, genuinely trying to educate people about protecting their identity. And when you said in the beginning, Brad, oh my God, does this sound like a far-fetched something out of a movie? This is from such a long time ago. I'm wondering whether that when this actually happens and comes about, because the technology hasn't been around all that long. When you think about it, if there's a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, we've got to wait for that time to pass before maybe discovering, hey, has there been any identity theft? So I'm just planning the questions. You might, I have been called, that sort of thing. Oh, you're paranoid, you're full on.
Fearmonger.
Yeah, but I don't live in it. I don't want to live in fear. I just like to be aware and and
Well, that's the
consciously aware
thing.
so that I can avoid the pitfalls.
Yeah, and I think that's my key
I
takeaway.
sleep at night.
Be conscious. You don't need to be afraid to post things and share. It's just, what are you sharing? Why are you sharing it? Just ask yourself some quality questions before you post things. Even just setting things to friends only versus public, that helps.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
sure, your friends can get hacked or your friends can turn into identity thieves themselves, but it's so much less likely than someone who is able just to see everything because you're posting globally. And I post globally, but I also don't post a lot about myself. So it depends
Yeah,
what you
true.
use social media for. A lot of different factors.
Yeah, that's so true. And with Snapchat, you know, I sometimes think, oh, like I'm a bit sus on a lot of things. Snapchat, it's like, oh, it's only there for a split second or whatever it is, and they can't retrieve it. Well, of course, people can screenshot, but then that person knows they've been screenshotted. But I always say to my kids, don't post anything that's inappropriate on Snapchat, just thinking that it's not going to be leaving a footprint, because I just don't. I just believe there's a footprint. It's in the system, it's in the cloud, and who knows, someone or sometime it may be retrieved.
You should
You don't
assume
have
that
anything
anything that you
against it.
post on the internet is going to be there forever.
Yeah, that's right. So even when you take it down from Facebook,
Yeah.
you might delete photos. It's already up there. That's important that we know. I use Facebook, just using that as an example, but Instagram and the like. Yeah, so I guess what I'd just like to say is, like, just protect your valuable asset, your name, your profile, protect your information, and protect your money. Yeah. And share those sort of that information with others, so you can help those more vulnerable people who are the young ones and the older ones. Why not?
Definitely. Thanks for watching. Share with someone who you think might find this interesting or might need to be made a little bit more aware of the risks and dangers of posting online, and, you know, just get those ideas for how to be a little bit more safe with it all. See you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks, Brad. See you, everyone.